Now, in order to fire our projectile, we would need to go into our player and give code. Okay, so public void fire projectile if, and then Greenfoot dot is key down space. So our input code, the Greenfoot dot is key down, is we've used many times before. Now this is the tricky part. We would be looking for like an add object. We don't have an add object because when we're adding our object to the world, you need to think about what would be in charge of adding or removing objects from a world, from a background. Well, the world class would be. So we could look in our world class, and it's kind of something you need to memorize, but also it makes sense that it would be in the world class. They're in control of adding and removing objects. Now, if I wanted to give a specific name to a projectile, I could. And so I actually do want to, because I want to rotate my projectile in a way that faces it forward. Now this is more for actually the pointing and clicking so the projectile follows where the mouse is. However, we want to do this now because I'm about to show you how to do the point and click. So I'm going to create a projectile variable and set it equal so that we have access to projectile a little bit later. And then the location of the projectile would be get X, because it will be the X. I'm in the player, the spaceship. So the location of the projectile horizontally should be on the X, and then get Y, and then minus. I could do like get image get image width divided by 2, but I'm going to be a little bit lazy here and just plug in a value and see what it looks like. And then we want to make sure this is where accessing the projectile is a good idea. So I can set my rotation or have it do something if I want it to. So yeah, actually, I probably have it drawn poorly. I probably need to have it set rotation to, if I'm facing up, the problem is my player is already facing up when the rotation is 0, and my projectile is facing up when the rotation is 0. So I'm actually just going to set my rotation, though, still to the correct rotation. So 270, and this will face my projectile towards the top. And now I'm going to change this, and I'll change this in the student code so that it's already fixed. But my width and my height are going to switch so that when I add in a projectile manually, holding shift-click, it'll look like it's facing 0. The reason I want to do that is because in my projectile, if I move 10, I want my projectile to move forward in that direction, okay? And then if my player is facing the wrong way, I don't want my projectile to be affected by it firing this way and then moving off horizontally to the right. I want it to move up with it. So my projectile is going to face 270, and actually I need to rotate my image, which I will also change. Set image, and then I can go rotate 90 degrees to the right so that it matches Greenfoot. And I might as well do that with the alien as well so that they're facing the way that I want them to. So then I now have, well, yeah, I need to set my image to this. There we go. So now I want my player, before it runs, to be facing the correct way. So I have to put in a constructor to set the rotation to 270 in my constructor. And now it'll be facing the correct way. So this way, when I move, if I were to move forward, it would move the correct direction. It also means that when I go into my set rotation, I can get my rotation of my player, and it will match the player's rotation. So then I fire projectile, and now when the spacebar is pushed, the problem is 60 times per second I'm adding in a projectile. So this is adding in way too many, way too fast. So I could either do a Boolean projectile fired equals false, and projectile fired equals false. And then once I fire my projectile, I would say projectile fired equals true. And then I don't, if Greenfoot dot is key down space, if it's not down because of the exclamation point here, and projectile fired is true, which I don't need equals true because this will be a true or a false value. So technically I could say like this and false here as well, but you don't have to choose one or the other. Then I need to set my projectile fired equal to false again, because that means I've let go of the spacebar and I previously had fired the projectile, and so now it needs to be set back to false. So this will make it so that I have to let go to fire my projectile. So that's good. Now you're going to hear a lot of clicking and going on around the room and stuff like that, which is fine. And then you want to move side to side. If Greenfoot dot is key down right, set location, get x plus 5, comma, get y, and then copy, paste. Now, if you notice, what you can do from this point is basically use the catch the apple code to randomly have enemies fall from the sky, and you could have a boss enemy that randomly falls. You could have an enemy that takes 2 shots or 1 shot to hit. And the last thing that you would need to do is we're going to face our alien down to start. And so this makes it so that their rotation matches which direction they're actually facing. Whereas if the image is off, the alien, the computer will think it's facing to the right because 0 rotation is facing to the right, but the image will be showing a different direction. So we want to make sure those match. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say, so either put it in the alien or the projectile. So it's pretty simple code here. If is touching alien.class, we want to remove touching alien.class. And then secondly, you want to get world to remove yourself, or remove this object, get world.remove object, and you can use the keyword this. Now, this can be problematic because if you remove this object and you're trying to read any more code after it, if there's any code after it, there will be an error. So if you needed to check if you're hitting the alien or you're hitting the boss, you would have to do like an else if, so that you are only reading this line of code if this is not happening, because if this is happening, you would be removing the object from the world, and it would be a problem. But for us, at this point, this is fine. This will work. So I'll have the alien here, and I can add other things to the alien later, but if I fire, boom, it removes them. We can add score, we can add all sorts of stuff as we go. So the next thing I want to do with fire projectile is, instead of having the player move side to side, we can still have the player fire projectile, and that's what's nice, and have it be the same way. But, except not with the space, but we'll fix that. Point to mouse. Okay? So, there is code in your tree mouse info that you can get your X value and get your Y value of your mouse, which is exactly what we need to do. And it's in greenfoot.getMouseInfo. Will return a mouse info object. So the easiest way to do this is have a mouse info object called mouse equals new, equals greenfoot.getMouseInfo. That will speed up the process, so now we can just use the variable mouse instead of greenfoot.getMouseInfo, but that would work. So first, you want to make sure your mouse is on the screen. So if it's not equal to null, we'll save you from having an error when you're off the screen. So you have to be on the screen for you to access your mouse. Okay. Then you would say turn towards your mouse.getX, mouse.getY, and then your fire projectile, you can still use the spacebar for now, but I need to call that in the act method. Let's not forget to do that. Point to mouse. Okay, now I'm pointing to the mouse. Uh-oh, my fire projectile is always starting from like this circle here. It's like the Y value plus or minus 10 or whatever I have in there. So now instead of that, I am going to remove that. And the better way of doing this, since we are getting our rotation, we can say p.move, which will literally move our projectile object. And let's have them move as many pixels, basically, as the spaceship. With the spaceship is like quite a few pixels. So it'll move it 50 forward, which is really nice because depending on which direction you're facing, it'll move it towards the top of the ship. And the other thing is, instead of if is key down, there's got to be a Greenfoot method that I mouse clicked on null will allow you to click on anything, and then we wouldn't need this happening at all. So you wouldn't need the projectile fired at all. So it might have been a good idea if I made these two separate methods. But all right, so then we're firing the projectile here. So now we click, boom. All right. So then maybe use spacebar to move your player forward pretty simply. But then we could use gravity and all sorts of things. You could try working with that. So let's just say if greenfoot.isKey down space move 10. That actually moves us a little too fast, probably. Move 5. Okay, so we can move around and fire our projectiles, and there's a bunch of different things we can do. If the projectile is at edge, you probably want to remove it. So we need, let me just do that because that'll be the else if is at edge, just something new that we haven't really covered. you would do the same thing. Now this has to be an else if because we either want to remove it. We don't want to check if it's at the edge if it's already been removed. So that's why we have to have the else if. So either this gets read or this gets read. No code can be below a remove object this because it's already been removed from the world. Technically, Greenfoot code, if you did like a Greenfoot dot something, it could read that code because it's not accessing the actor. But if you're removing the object, no actor code can be called because the object's already been removed. Let's have our, maybe we'll have our objects randomly come in the world. So we would create a timer. Oh, we're already in the world, so all we have to do is do add object. New alien. Well, let's do this. We're going to create an alien object like so. So we have access to it. And then we'll say A. And its location is going to be tricky. We want to randomize our location. So random int ran x equals greenfoot.get random number. Let's say there are 3 spaces on the x value that you can be. Int ran y equals and 3 spaces on the y value. And then it will be ran x, ran y. The only thing we don't want to have happen is, so this will be times the world times get width divided by 2 and times get height divided by 2. But if they're both 1, if ran x equals 1 and ran y equals 1, I guess I'll do a while so that it repeatedly does this until they are not equal to each other. We are going to re-copy paste this and they're going to re-randomize. So by doing this, theoretically, I haven't tested this, if the x and y are both 0, it'll populate right here. If x is 1, y is 0, it'll populate here because 1 times the half of the width would be right in the middle. 2 times half of the width would be right at the edge. And then if the y value is, here or here, it'll grab one of these spots. It won't be in the middle ever because it can't be 1, 1. So I'm theoretically adding them in random spots. It looks like we are. Okay, so then we need to add the last little bit to it is that after we add them in, a dot turn towards So this will be tricky. We're gonna have to do this in the alien, and we're gonna have to add just a little bit more. So public static int x equals 0 to start. Public static int y. Don't use static unless you know what you're doing. A static variable is one that's assigned to the class instead of an individual object. So while each of these aliens have their own x and y value, a static x and y value for player means it's only assigned to the entire class. So all of the objects would match. So you have to only have, basically here, we have to only have one player, otherwise it would get very confused on get X or get Y. And so now we have those values set, and since they're static, we can have our aliens turn towards our player.x and our player.y, because those are static and public variables. And then we can move 5 so that we can chase our player down. And now they should be coming in. And now we have this game where we need to run around and fire. And they will chase you. And you guys can make them destroy you and have health and do all sorts of things. I'll let you guys go from there. All right?